Yeah, so Mike gave me a hard time last time for not welcoming everyone and making it clear that we were starting. So
There
we're
we go.
starting. And everyone
To be fair, I give everybody a hard time about everything.
I just wanted to head that off, and so everybody who's on screen is in the discussion, and we're doing this thing. So,
Yay.
and I thought this was kind of an interesting one because, at least for me, I wanted to talk about not only End of Watch, the whole trilogy, with maybe like a side of the outsider. Just to kind of like wrap it up in a nice question I had for discussion was just because I was doing a lot of just research, trying to come up with questions and stuff, and I usually read a lot of the reviews to kind of see what people are thinking about it and what they think, and is that the original title, working title as he was writing the book, was The Suicide Prince, and he had actually marketed it that way while he was writing it. This was the title of the book, and so it was pretty well known that that was the title. And so I was just wondering what everyone's thoughts were on that, and like why maybe he made the switch, and that whole thing. And then after we get through that, kind of just because I didn't feel like really making it a separate question, was sort of the themes of suicide and him being the Suicide Prince, and he's called that specifically by Holly in the book.
So I think I'm glad he changed it, because you sort of had the first book being called The Mercedes Killer, so that was sort of Brady's title, and the next book was, Finders Keepers, the agency, all that. But I like that this one was sort of Bill's title. It was his end of watch. It was his sort of, final act. And I think, for trilogy purposes and for the, the fact that he was sort of, our guy throughout, maybe a little less so in the second book, but we kind of went over that. It was good to me, I think, to focus on that. I think The Suicide Prince, while a unique title, would have been just another Brady title, and I like that it's sort of spread out.
I agree.
Yeah, I because it's known as the Bill Hodges Trilogy. When you asked that question, I was like, oh yeah, Mr. Mercedes is Brady, but then Finders Keepers is Holly and Bill, then End of Watch is Bill. And then as I thought about it, I said, well, Mr. Mercedes is Brady, but it's also Bill's case. It's the Mr. Mercedes, that's what they called the case, the Mr. Mercedes case. And then we move on to, like John said, him having his detective agency or his skip tracers or whatever however they want to refer to themselves as. And then this really is, I think this was the most about Bill than any of the other books were.
I think it was, you got to know him really well in Mr. Mercedes, but in this one, he reflected on his growth too. And so it wasn't just, hey, here's Bill sitting sadly in his living room. This was, here are all the changes he's made over the past however many years. Because the timeline kind of confuses me, but it was like, what, 3 years after Mr. Mercedes? Or was it 6 years?
No, I think it was 6 years.
Yeah,
6 years.
Mr. Mercedes, I believe, happened in 2009 or 2010, and this is set in 2015 or 16, I think.
Yeah.
I think
you're right.
2016.
Nice. When did the book come out? Also 2016?
2016. I think it's 14, 15, 16.
Awesome. It feels like it too. Like the writing is just as tight in all the books, and it all kind of makes sense. Finders Keepers seems outside of it a little bit, but they all sort of flow together. I mean, yeah, you guys were able to read the last one in 3 weeks. It was real fast.
Oh yeah.
I picked it up. I picked it up about 11 or 12 days ago.
Wow, yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more than that. Maybe it was about 2 weeks.
Yeah, I started reading right about the same time as you, Mike.
Yeah, it flies.
Yeah.
And like you kind of feel that momentum build throughout all 3 books too. A little bit of a speed bump in the middle, but I think Bill became so much more fully formed, at least in my mind, where like by the end of it, you're kind of guessing what he's about to do and guessing what he's thinking. And then all Stephen King really has to do is just kind of go in and fill in a couple little details that you didn't suspect. A lot less of Tyrone Feelgood and a lot more of
yeah.
a lot more of him like helping counsel Holly. Like that's sort of one of the progressions.
Yeah.
I think this book was. Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm gonna say I feel like this book was helped in terms of sort of the speed and how quickly you can kind of get into it by the fact that because it's book 3 and you're not, introducing an entirely new set of people in the same way that book 2 started off with, where you got how far in before Bill showed up, that you already had these established characters and you could just sort of hit the ground running, and that kind of helps speed it along too. I feel like you can move faster through a book in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess what I was going to say is I feel like Mr. Mercedes was more, was a little bit more Brady than Bill, or at least it was equal parts Bill and Brady. Whereas this one, I felt like it was more Bill and Holly. We still got Brady, and the one thing I noticed, did anybody notice this, at least in my copy? Can you guys read that, or is it too shiny?
No, too shiny.
Okay.
Too shiny.
There's a
I saw a picture.
There's a section called the Suicide Prince.
Yeah.
In my version, it doesn't have its own title page. So in my copy, badconcert.com and all the other sections, they have their own title page. The Suicide Prince has, and it's like 28, 30 pages long, but it's only got no, you can't. I don't know. Maybe if I turn the screen brightness down.
Now I'm looking for my book.
It's.
I'm looking at my.
It's maybe 2/3 of the way through. Here, let me grab. Let me grab the book. I'll be right back.
You're talking about like the Blackish and those things?
Yeah, I think he's saying there was like a big call out that the name was the Suicide Prince. I don't remember seeing that, but
So you know what? Well, I'll wait till he gets back on. But I'm looking at my version, and it's interesting the way they did it.
Oh, okay. Mine's just the title of one of these.
Right. So I have the Kindle version. And
me too.
There are.
That's
how mine is. But
it's not the same as like the whole page.
Mm-hmm.
Like a whole section
every other
of the book.
section.
So in my version, there's one that says Brady and one that says Library Al, and those are also written in the same way.
Yeah. Yes, Matt.
Yeah. So it goes like title page Z, January 2016, then Brady, which is sort of the same way as Suicide Prince, then badconcert.com, which is its own page. Then Blackish, which is its own page. Then Library Owl, which is sort of a subheading, and then Bad Concert, then Suicide Prince, and then Heads and Skins, which is the last one. Yeah. So it's interesting. It almost seems like you've got the main parts of the book, and then these little subsections where you get into really deep what Brady's been doing and his activities in these like subsections with subheadings.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I didn't realize that. I didn't catch that on Library Owl or.
Yeah, neither did I. Like catch the little differences between the formatting.
Suicide Prince was the one that jumped out to me. So the other ones are a good catch, John.
They definitely were like when they. I guess they were Brady sections for sure, but
Right. Cool. All right.
Maybe shows a little bit of their indecision with Stephen King and the publisher to name the book, as maybe they hadn't settled on how important the Suicide Prince was going to be.
Well, I guess that's what Jessica's question today made me wonder if that Suicide Prince section was sort of like one of the first things he started putting together, because those really do get into what Brady is. Yeah, Library Al, and it gets into what Brady's doing as opposed to the overall story.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a good note. I didn't catch that. So,
did you guys feel? So part of when I was reading what Brady was doing, especially I think near the end where it really kind of laid out sort of step by step how he got Library Al and then how he got the doctor and how he got the first nurse, that it was almost a little too much information. That it would have been better like left a little to the imagination on the step by step. I don't know that I would say it's like an overwhelming thing, but it was just something I was thinking I was reading. Like, if some of the mystique wasn't taken away by seeing sort of how he did it, little piece by little piece.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we were in on it from the beginning that it was Brady. Everything was going. There was no real mystery in it. And I feel like I mean, the book moved really fast. There was no, I mean, Hodges was just like, oh yeah, this is just Brady doing something magical. Especially because, yeah, he was just like, yeah, and everyone else is like, oh yeah, you know what, you're probably right. It's probably something to do with these Game Boys. It was just like really accepting of that third reality, the whole book, when the others were so based in reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely took that Stephen King turn at the end of Finders Keepers.
So I maybe that's why I thought he did it, because there wasn't any of the mysticism, right? Finders Keepers and Mr. Mercedes are 100%. Well, until we see Brady knocking over the picture frame, it's hinted at. But other than that, there's no mention of the supernatural in either one of those. It's a real person who's just a bad person. So I guess I almost felt like King had to do it to bring anybody that wasn't familiar with that kind of stuff up to speed. I guess that's why I felt he was doing it. It wasn't just someone pulling strings. He was actually, he had some kind of supernatural powers, and I guess I feel like that's why he went into it, because we hadn't seen that yet in any of the other parts of the trilogy.
You're definitely right. It sort of seemed like he was trying to establish the scientific basis for it.
Yeah.
Where he brings up the drugs, he brings up the head trauma, and then he's like, this is how magic can work in the real world. In my real world, it exists because of all these things. And then lays out how the game works and how each person is taken over and especially susceptible in that exact moment.
But John,
I wonder if
I think I agree that as people who have read 17 other Stephen King books, I'm not sure that we needed it.
And for the viewers out there, that's just in this club. I mean, we're not talking about lifetime Stephen King here.
I wonder
many more.
Yeah, right? I wonder if that's one of those places where like reading The Outsider first was sort of a little bit of a disservice, because that primed us even more so for the mystical in this world with some of these particular characters even.
I was
And
gonna
that, yeah.
Yeah. I do think I kind of felt the same way as what you were saying, like the way that he laid out, well, like, this was my whole plan and this is exactly how I did it. And I want you to know every single detail and how it went into it and how I manipulated them and all of this stuff. And I feel like I kind of wanted to know some of that stuff a little bit, but he goes into that in a lot of other books. So I just kind of was like, I don't need it. I think the point you're trying to make is just how smart he is and how, much effort he put into this and how manipulative he is to be able to get all these people to do all of these things. For me, it was enough that his friend from the computer place was like, I pretty much knew it was him the entire time because of a lot of the interactions. And like, to me, that was almost enough to show that he was pulling all of the strings. It kind of was, I think it probably could have been done better. But that we knew, because people would want to know the details, but I think it could have been, done a little bit better. I think maybe some people who haven't read a zillion King books probably liked it, but I agree. I kind of was like, oh, been there, done that. We can infer.
Want to get back to the meat.
Yeah.
It did kind of feel like the whole, no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die kind of moment.
Absolutely. And speaking of Freddy showing up, I was surprised but pleased. Like I thought one of the things this book did really well, like obviously it was going to have callbacks to the other books. It's the third in the trilogy. It's the same main characters throughout, but I thought it did well about pulling the little things. I really appreciated the incorporation of Freddy and even calling the boss, and I appreciated the incorporation of Tom. I thought that really brought the second book again back into the fold, in a good way. It really, it was really a case of the next one coming out, kind of adding to the second one, and bringing him into the universe, a little more closely. So I was really pleased with those things.
Mm-hmm. Although I felt bad I think you're supposed to feel bad for Freddy, but like, I also was like, what exactly motivated you? After everything that came out with his relationship with the mom. No. I'm saying from the beginning.
The first
that came out with the relationship with the mom, to be like, I found this weirdly sexual picture of your mother, and I'm aware of the pervertedness of that. And I just thought, you vegetable person who I was not really friends with, who murdered lots of people, might want this perverted picture. So here you go. And I'm like, what?
I don't know that she knew the full extent of like
Why?
the details of that relationship, though. So I can see it. Her trying to do a nice thing for somebody. He's a vegetable. He's never gonna, be anything else. He got his comeuppance in that respect. So it's not,
How
I know, but she made some comments during it that she knew some stuff was messed up with the mom. And I was like, then why are you giving him this photo? I don't know. It's just like, you're just like, you knew how much it would mean to him because of how messed up it was, but like, ew. I don't know.
Maybe she didn't know how far it went. Maybe it was like,
I'm sure she didn't know
it was a little too close, but
that bad. But I would have been like, here's some flowers. That nobody ever visits you, and I don't know. I wouldn't have gone there. And maybe he still, even with the flowers, would have gotten her in. But I just was totally shocked. I was like, whoa, not something I would have ever said. I'm like,
So the photo came from work, right?
It was
Yeah.
in a locker.
So it wasn't an inappropriate photo. It wasn't like one of the cheesecake photos on the computer. It was just him and his mom together.
Yeah. But it was one that was like very emotionally significant to him. She just didn't quite understand it.
Right.
I'm trying to see if I can find it using
Yeah, no,
search function, but I'm not.
where she's
I don't remember when it was.
What I was gonna say, I felt like Freddie was introduced really late in the story, and I was really like delighted when I found out, oh, Freddie was here, and like finding out like a character that you kind of really like from Mr. Mercedes is back, like you were saying earlier, John.
Yeah.
Have any of you read Ready Player One?
Yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't, and I feel like the description is totally polar opposite, but I couldn't help but picturing H from Ready Player One whenever they talk about Freddie.
Sure.
Right?
Except, like, have you seen the movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so spoilers for all the viewers. So, like, was H actually Lena, wait, why can't I remember her last name? The actor that actually plays her in the movie?
You mean physically? Was she described that way?
Yeah, I don't think she was.
I don't remember.
No, I don't think so. I think it was kind of a shock when people saw her in the trailer.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree with you that in the book version, I think H really matches Freddie.
Well, yeah, because I mean Brady's horribly racist.
Yeah. And I was also sort of imagining girl with dragon tattoo. A little bit of Rooney Mara.
that's
I guess she is more Elizabeth Salander. She's described as more Elizabeth Salander.
But I'm with you though, like somebody kind of mystique, really funny, biting sense of humor.
Right. The whole Agent Zero or whatever she, this is Agent Zero, yeah. Hello, comrade.
I found the paragraph, but it doesn't indicate anything of the picture. It just says it all started a picture of Brady and his mom, and then they would have tossed it, and then wrapping the picture and taking it to the hospital was pure impulse. So
the picture actually, we might get a better description of the picture from Finders Keepers.
Yeah, you know what? You're probably right.
I think she says something later about, I think it's because she's talking about, it's later when she's talking about like just the way that the guy talks, and like I immediately knew it was him, and like, certain things. But anyway, I really liked the whole Freddie thing, and I felt bad for her, but
I agree. I like Freddie a lot too, and I feel for her. I know.
Like her girlfriend said though, like, what do you think they're giving you all this random cash for like such an easy thing? You kind of have to know that something not great is going on. I mean,
I think we see this a lot with there are certain characters. I listen to a Columbo podcast, and they talk about a character in many Columbos called the Poor Bastard. And there's a guy in usually a guy in a lot of Columbo episodes who's like, who the murderer tries to pin something on, who needs money, who does something maybe they shouldn't have, but they were in a bad, they're not a bad person, but they're in a bad situation. And I feel like we see that a lot. It's like the lovable loser kind of thing, I feel like King does a better job of making them more fleshed out, more real people. Whereas, back in the 70s, it was literally just, It was just like a black guy who was a junkie, you know.
Mhm.
Mhm. So I want to talk a little bit about as far as him being like the suicide prince, but at least the suicides, because I thought that that whole aspect and him reaching out to these, teens and to the women, the nurse and the quadriplegic that he got at the center. Although I was looking for at the beginning of the book the retelling of the
The
Actual
city center.
the city center. Um,
I'm glad we didn't go through that again. I didn't need to hear about another person waiting in the cold who got plowed down by a car.
Exactly. How did you get?
No, I was good. I was happy to see it from the ENT's point of view.
We had talked about that.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, and I also thought it was interesting. The EMT's point of view was interesting too. So, but that whole like and what he's saying to these teens to get them to commit suicide is just horrific, and I thought that writing was just so compelling, and I was just like, on the train, of course, reading this was just so horrified and like, God, the kid who shot himself in front of his dad,
Mhm.
and just jumping out the window, and I was just like, oh my God, he was just getting off on it, and it was just like, you're a monster. And the website, like, I thought they did a pretty good job with this, realistic stats about, people thinking about it, and then just hearing other people talk about suicide gets those kids to think about suicide, and even the kids that didn't have the Zappits, and so that how important it was to pull down the website. I really liked that whole part of the book. I thought it was really, really compelling. I flew through those pages. I was just like, oh my God, who is he going to catch next?
It was very affecting.
Yeah.
I would say for me, that was like the roughest part to read. It made me so insanely angry in a way that, like, the people at the beginning, you didn't really know them, and okay, that kicked off the story. And Freddie, like, when I thought she had been shot and killed, I got it, like, in service of the story. But I don't know, the parts sort of at the end there where he was picking them off one by one, and it just bothered me on such a fundamental level. And it was, I mean, it's just a testament to his writing, but it really, really did, in a way that I don't think anything in these, like the three books as a whole, bothered me until that point. And even when you got to the sort of very end and they gave the numbers, and it wasn't any stories attached, it was just all these numbers, and it just, like, I don't know, that was the part that really got to me. That, like, really got to me.
I think I mean, every time he picked another red dot, I guess I started thinking, what would he be saying to me? And I think that's the part of the book that sort of plays on our own vulnerabilities, because everybody, each one was different. It was the transgendered kid, it was the fat girl, it was and I'm sure everybody's got those things, no matter how cool, no matter how together your life seems, everybody's got those things. And yeah, that was the scariest part, as far as as far as this book went for me. And I think that's why he considered calling it the Suicide Prince at first, because I feel like there maybe was more of that. I feel like that was maybe his focus to begin with, before maybe this became the Bill Hodges trilogy. I feel like maybe he was looking at Brady as sort of like maybe like a 2-book monster, and then Finders Keepers came later, and it became the story of Bill Hodges.
Which,
Yeah,
I mean, I was going to say, I wanted to hear your opinion on this, Chase, because we didn't get to talk to you about Mr. Mercedes and Finders Keepers.
No, I was going to say I could totally see that, because Finders Keepers kind of seems almost like a one-off if in Bill Hodges' life, whereas like the Mr. Mercedes or the Bill Hodges trilogy is really just Mr. Mercedes and End of Watch. That's really his story, whereas Finders Keepers was definitely just something a case they were involved in.
Agreed. Yeah.
And that's why I think that, End of Watch is a better title than Suicide Prince, because, it ends with Bill finally closing that last case.
Mm-hmm.
That was, there were no other big cases left open on his thing that they talked about in Mr. Mercedes.
No, this was the big one.
Yeah. What, like, just because I knew I worked at the Senate, so I had a lot of Capitol Police friends, and then when I worked at Legal Aid, and just I know a lot of police officers, and End of Watch is also if you're killed on duty. So I was like really convinced that that's what was going to happen. Even when he had his prognosis, I was like, no, it's going to be End of Watch, killed on duty. And then it didn't happen. And he said during the book that they call like retirement End of Watch. So I guess it was like this official, I'm finally like retiring because this is my last.
Done my good.
Yeah, I think there were 2 big disappointments for me with this book. And one was, especially with the cancer, I expected Bill to sacrifice himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that at Heads and Skins, that he was going to do something that ended up with his death and saving Holly and or Jerome. I was waiting for it and waiting for it. And I thought about it a lot after it didn't happen. And one thing I think King is very good at is real life. As crazy and as out of this world that a lot of his plots are, a lot of his characters are. In the end, it doesn't. A lot of things don't happen like they do in the movies. And I guess I felt like, what, he did the right thing. It would have been too neat. It would have been too tidy. It would have been too nice if Bill sacrificed himself for Holly or Jerome or both of them. And I guess I'm torn on it. I really wanted to see it happen, and then I thought, well, but with pancreatic cancer and withering away and chemo and all that stuff, would it have been a better ending? Would it have not? I actually couldn't decide, but I think I know why King didn't do it, because it would almost be expected.
I remembered from Outsider where she said he died of cancer, and so I assumed that was what was going to have to kill him. When was the question for me, and I actually thought right after the confrontation at the lodge, when they're going back down, it says he kind of fades to black. I thought that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, the exertion of the final confrontation was enough to kind of tip him over the edge given his health. And then it turns out it wasn't, and he had 8 more months. But I think I would have otherwise expected him to go out, in a sacrifice like you did, Mike. But I did remember that from the outsider, where it specifically said it was a cancer, and so I knew he couldn't. I knew they wouldn't have said that if it was like something else, basically Brady in some way or some other machination.
Mike, you said you had like a willful ignorance of that part in Outsider. Did you kind of know where it was all going after a while? Or?
Like I said when we talked about Outsider, I felt like there were spoilers in there, and I feel like I really did just gloss over it, and I couldn't remember.
Yeah, good for you.
I was kind of racking my brain as I was reading. I'm like, does he do something? Does he go out in the hail of bullets? I couldn't remember.
Good.
Yeah.
I remember he died,
right.
He died, but I couldn't remember how he died either.
Right. No, yeah, I did remember he was, he didn't survive, but
I also, I think it would have broken Holly if he would have died in that way, in a sacrifice. I think she would have blamed herself. I think it would have set her back, and she wouldn't have been who she was, an outsider.
That's a great perspective.
That's reasonable. But I want to push back on Mike a little bit as far as the real world climax. I'm skipping many questions, and that's fine. That's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had a little bit of a problem with the climax, with Jerome just being here I am, just showing up with my snowplow, with my
Wasn't it an Arctic cat? Does he just have Arctic cats in every book?
Yeah, with my Arctic cat with the bulletproof thing on the front. So you go ahead and shoot at me, but if I am not getting shot, and then I'm going to run you over.
I'm sorry, Jessica, is this your first Stephen King book?
Because you're saying that he went for the more realistic ending where Bill didn't go out and sacrifice himself. And I'm like, really? But he actually went for the showing up at the nick of time with the super saving snowplow ending.
Again,
now,
have you read The Stand? The literal deus, the literal hand of God.
The hand of God.
Okay, so
and,
maybe
and The Shining, the similar ending.
Yeah.
So I'm buying it. I'm just saying I think that is less realistic than Bill having somehow gotten the gun away from him and also getting shot, but having shot wrestling for the gun, and 2 shots went out. They both got shot. So I feel like that's more realistic.
Realistic may be the wrong word. It would have been much neater. It would have been much little tied up with a bow. I think it's very, very much in King's milieu to have Bill suffer for 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me feels like there was a version of this book where there was a chapter of him losing weight and not being able to eat and just withering away. And I feel like we were saved from that because I do feel like King wanted him to suffer. Not necessarily for penance, but yeah. So realistic is definitely the wrong word. I agree with you, Jessica.
I mean, you don't usually expect your action hero to spend the last 8 months of his life die of cancer at the end of a book. That's it's not where you usually go with those things. But
yeah, I liked it. It kind of made it more effective because it wasn't exactly like what you expected. But at least that's how I read it. Is yeah, like Mike's saying, it kind of flipped it on its head and made it a little more dark and devious, even though he didn't go into all the gory details of the thinning.
I almost think, I mean, yeah, dark and devious, but also in some ways, like, he was able to sort of say goodbye and be with his loved ones, and it wasn't like, he was just gone. And like I said, I do think the ramifications of, him getting shot and killed in that confrontation or something to that effect, I think it would have had big impacts on Holly, on Barbara. We don't know his daughter or anything, but, I have to imagine there's something there. Especially on his birthday and whatnot. So in some ways, yes, obviously it's not exactly a pleasant 8 months, but in some ways, he got to talk to Pete again and all those things, which is I think a more fitting ending for him than just being sort of done and not getting that kind of closure.
I forgot about the life-saving birthday text. Good job.
Well, when I was reading it, I'd forgotten that was his text message, because I guess just where I stopped reading the other day and then where I picked it up today, like, he wasn't getting text anymore, and so that came up in the middle of the thing, and I'm like, I know I should know that. There was something earlier, but like, what the hell? I thought it was something from a dream. I was so confused, and then when I was texting, I was like, oh yes, that's what that was.
Again, may I just say,
And
which, if you remember from our discussion of this, Dan, I hated. So
Yeah, you did.
Yes, we all. I don't know about we all hated, but I hated it, and I think the consensus was, this book has gone on for 2,000 pages, and I would just like it to end. Hand of God.
I almost feel like Stephen King's literature class, it was like that was the only day he showed up. Deus Ex Machina? What? Okay.
I'll put one in every book.
Well, didn't you
All the
see what
time.
I put on our thing about his literature class? Where's it?
no, what?
I put lots of fun Stephen King things on.
I will say I got a little tired of the trope of the person, oh my God, do you think they're dead? And they're not really dead. Like, it kind of bothered me with what's his face's mother in the last book, and then you had sort of 3 in succession here with Barbara first, and then Freddie, and then even Bill at the end where he kind of faded to black, and I was like, all right, enough.
So I get like, so Barbara, I'm like, no, she's not dead. I know she's not dead. And then Freddie, I actually was surprised. Like, I'm like, oh, she didn't kill Freddie. And then Bill, of course. And you're like, well, he's done it twice. Third time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, Freddie, I thought was dead, and I was okay. Like, like, she had sort of served her purpose at that point, and it was good to see her back in that way, and I got it. Like, occasionally to have a good book, you've got to have people die.
We might be reading a lot of Stephen King.
Yeah, really. But I mean, it made sense in that moment, and it wasn't like, I got it. But and then all of a sudden, the bullet went through 15 different things in her pocket.
Right.
They were all lined up perfectly.
She had a deck of cards and her flask and a copy of the book that we're reading.
The bulletproof bra,
Yeah.
I'm just going to start carrying that stuff around all the time.
You should. That's
Just
only
in
smart.
case.
Yeah.
Because that's come up in several books.
Couple of flasks,
flask.
Altoid box, and cigarettes.
And then another one was like a badge or some other book I read. Might not have been Stephen King. I can't remember. But so the Stephen King comics, it's like, I wrote 3 books yesterday.
Oh yeah,
It's like, Stephen King, you should be afraid of your car. Stephen King, you should be afraid of your dad. And then Stephen King on writing. If your book isn't set in Maine, it's bad.
Which is not true. These are great books.
I have to say, these are 4 of my favorites.
Yeah.
Favorites? Whoa.
I would agree.
Like top 10? Or like top
At least one of them made the top 10.
Yes, agreed.
Okay. I mean, I could accept some top 10, but I don't know if I could accept top 5.
No, these are not like 4 of my top 5.
That's getting some crazy town there. We're gonna have to rediscuss.
Mr. Mercedes, an outsider, yes, but
yeah,
agreed.
I think Mr. Mercedes was my favorite of the 4.
I think outsider, just because I was so convinced that it was the night of crime thriller, and then it took such a steep turn and was awesome. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe that was the tone he was going for this.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, sorry.
No, keep going. I'm thinking.
I feel like that was the tone he was going for, like The Outsider, how it had that realistic with that twist of supernatural,
mm-hmm.
into Watch, but I feel like he kind of missed the mark in Into Watch.
Yeah.
Well, I think he just did it so much better in Outsider that then we were kind of going back to the preamble that we should have already read before Outsider, and I agree with you. It didn't work quite as well.
I do really want to reread Outsider now that I'm
now
that I've gone through these 3 and have gotten, and it hasn't been as long as I've seen like Holly and all. It'll be nice to revisit that. Because
I remember being very affected by the whole criminal justice system and all of the comments I felt like it was making on it. And then sort of the characters and of course it went back to that whole, and I love the Stephen King small town trope. Like I love that trope. Because I felt like I grew up in a small town. And so I'm like, oh man, I always like wanted there was like this building in my town, and like I never saw, it was supposed to be a cleaners. I never saw anyone go in there. You know what I mean? And there was like never any cars parked around. And I was convinced that it was actually like a front for like a mob. And my mom was like, there's no mob in like our like small town. And I was like, you don't know. It could be. I was like, why doesn't anyone ever go in there? People need shirts cleaned. So that whole small town thing. So yeah, I gotta reread it but I like of the 3, definitely Mr. Mercedes is my favorite. I can be definitive about that.
100%. For me, it's like Mr. Mercedes, and then like End of Watch, and then Finders Keepers.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mercedes is above and beyond the other 2. But I do like the other 2. And yeah, I mean, piggybacking on your small town thing, it's funny because I grew up in a town that is 1.24 square miles. That's how small my town is.
Oh my
wow.
God.
There are maybe 8,000 people in my town, in the town that I grew up in. And like even when Stephen King talks about a small town, I'm like, no, that's not a small town. Like, because he's got like incorporated townships of like, that spread, there might not be as many people, but it spreads this like huge area in Maine. And yeah, we were in the Guinness World Book of Records for the number of bars that we had.
Per capita.
We were per square mile.
Nice.
We actually held the record. Hoboken beat us actually. So New Jersey strong. But yeah, I've always thought about that because there were bars I never saw anybody going into. There was a bar called the Library that was less than a quarter mile from my mom's corner, and
Meth
like,
labs.
I never saw anyone walk into that bar ever in my lifetime. And I'm like, there's got to be something going on in there.
Although maybe they just wanted it for the Guinness Book of Records.
They just opened a bunch of bars.
Empty shells of bars.
I mean, if that's what you're going for, and that's all you had going for your town,
Some guy's like, I got a bottle of whiskey. I'm a bar.
it's like Peter builds a bar in his basement. All right, so I have some questions that I really, really want to discuss about this book. Two of them are kind of related. I have serious problems with the hospital where Brady is staying. Like ethical problems, all kinds of problems that I don't understand what was going on there. And then I really think it's a little bit discussed, but I really do think those teenagers were fucking stupid. And I don't understand how they got that many people to not. I felt like maybe it's different generation and that's the answer. But if some guy came up to me in the mall, give me something, I would be like, excuse me, get the fuck away from me. Like, no, I don't know you. You are some old guy, and I'm with my friends, and I don't want to talk to you.
Free electronics, man. Free electronics.
No, but apparently they weren't even cool electronics, though. That's the other thing. I mean, if they were giving away iPhones or something, that...
So you got your price. I see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, but still. But also, it's not like they were like it's not like they were like teenagers giving away. It was like an old guy with like a briefcase.
He was immaculately dressed, distinguished looking.
Okay.
Which matters to teenagers? It does not.
At first, Jessica, I was like, at first I was not with you on this. I thought you were talking about teenagers jumping on the suicide bandwagon.
Oh no.
So now
I'm full on board with that.
I do have to agree with you here. Yeah, a 65-year-old man walking up to a random person and saying, "Here, I've got this free thing." I feel like teenagers in this day and age would be like, "No fucking way." If you wanted to give them out, you'd need like, a young hip person in a branded polo at a table in the mall. That's what you need in this day and age. It didn't work for the story though. It doesn't fit in with the what we're setting up as far as
Right.
Z-Boy and Dr. Z. So yes, I was prepared to
fight
you.
It's okay. Yeah, I would have if that was my argument, you could have fought me.
But no, I am 100% in Camp Jessica.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you have a point. It didn't bother me. I don't know why. It just
like that.
It didn't. Well, yeah. I just kind of was like, all right. I don't know why. I mean, because you're right. Like logically speaking. Exactly.
You just haven't gotten to stranger danger with your kids yet, okay?
No. I need to. I mean, JR will go to anybody, but at one point I found myself walking. At one point, I found myself walking down the sidewalk with JR, and he was holding the hands of one of the cashiers at the local grocery store. Who, I've seen her around, obviously, but I don't even know her name. And yet we walked a block together. Yeah, stranger danger's got to be thought at some point. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the odds that a teenager is gonna take anything random from some random old guy is not high. But like I said, it didn't bother me as such.
The website was a much better plan.
Yeah.
Concert.com website was a much better plan, in my
opinion. And like sending it out through Facebook too. It was like
he did the research on that one. Like he always credits some technical expert that helped him get the details right. But I think that one specifically, it felt very real.
Oh yeah.
Very plausible.
I was like, oh, that would have worked for sure. I just was not buying the way that the Zappits were. we're done.
Can I just say I think that I had mentioned before I had two big disappointments, and my second disappointment was the name Zappets. The whole remake, I was just like, come on, you're better than this.
No, okay, but what's a more cheesy word that would have communicated that it was basically for kids? Like, Zappets is pretty good.
That's the thing. I'm like, come on, you could come up with something better. Like,
I was imagining that they were like leapfrogs, right? Like for kids, not really like able to do much, but it could read like a smart like children's book. And it could have like a couple games where you click stuff. Like that's sort of what I was.
Yeah, I think that's similar to what I was sort of picturing.
Maybe I've been to too many concerts, and Zappets and Whippets were just like. It was
do we need to censor this part of the broadcast?
No, yeah, I felt like you, Eric. It was kind of a cheesy name that, like, yeah, it invoked what it needed to invoke.
Yeah, it sort of fit. Some terrible marketing guy trying to hit the like toddler demographic. No.
Like that's why they went bankrupt. So
$189 for a toddler toy? No, thank you. I have a 2-year-old. Okay.
Yeah, well, wait till she's 5, and then she wants all that stuff.
Speaking of bankruptcy, can I just tell you, as a former big firm lawyer who worked on bankruptcy-related litigation, I was actually really delighted by all that stuff.
Okay, how accurate was it? This is like we gotta get the man on the ground.
I am surprised that he just sort of blasted out all the information. Yes, they said the bankruptcy was over and everything was sort of tied up at that point, but I still don't believe a partner would have just sort of blasted out all that information to some random crank who called about it. So that was sort of unbelievable to me. But I mean, the idea of, what to do with these assets and getting the write-off versus seeing how much you can get for them and et cetera, and the bankruptcy filings and stuff. That all I was like, oh, wow, I like all this.
It tickled you. Yeah. And I think that's what bothered me the most about the hospital is that that's kind of like my field right now. Like, and so I'm like, this is not acceptable. This level of care is not appropriate. And I don't understand how, if this guy is feeding him all of these not FDA approved drugs, first of all, how is he getting them? And second of all, how is he getting them to the patient?
You think what?
I think you mean vitamins.
Yeah. I do mean vitamins. But those are not Medicare approved, by the way. So who's paying for those? Not Medicaid or Medicare approved.
Mm-hmm.
So who, I was sitting there like, who's paying for these?
Plot hole.
But then obviously there's no medical records of any of this, but like the nurses are very like aware. And so it's just so conspiracy. And I'm like, how much of this shit is going on? Like, and then you hear the stories. I guess just like right around when I was reading this, there was a story of another comatose woman, and it doesn't happen frequently or anything, but it does happen, who is pregnant.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, well now we got to figure out what's going, how this happened. And it's just like, my God, and Bill's offering bribes to get all this information, and I'm just like, oh God, I just need you all to just do your medical records correctly and timely, put them in, and not harm your patients. That's all I need. Just follow the law, people. Thank you.
Maybe it's just a bad stereotype, but I feel like I've read enough stories where you have an overbearing, snooty doctor who kind of just does his own thing, and the staff is all scared of him. And they don't want to cross him and whatnot. And usually by the end he's got a heart of gold and whatnot, but it's not here. I I rolled with it. I didn't find it that implausible that he was, slipping the mental patient who killed a bunch of people that no one really cared about some weird ass stuff, and nobody wanted to raise any red flags because, he was the doctor and they were the nurses, and who were they going to believe? And he was an awful bastard and nobody wanted to cross him, and it wasn't worth it, especially on Brady's behalf. Like, you can see if it was a sweet old lady down the corner, like, all right, one thing, but nobody cared about this guy. They were scared of him. They didn't like him anyway. So it didn't seem unusual that, that they were so willing to just kind of sweep it under the rug and ignore what was going on. And they all sort of, I'm not surprised they all knew about it. Like, that just seems like another one of those situations where, it's a closed group and everybody gossips and everybody knows everything that's going on. But, that they didn't say anything that makes sense.
I guess.
I thought they were very cheap. $50 is pretty cheap for all the information.
I was going to say, yeah. But I also didn't see Dr. Babineaux as being like, hey, nurse, give Brady this vitamin concoction, wink, wink. I figured, he was doing it himself, to be like, all right, thank you, nurse, we're all done here. And then, we'll squirt into the IV and we're
right.
Good,
He didn't make anybody else complicit.
Right.
No, I think it's just like, I guess what it made me think of was just this, that there's been all these OIG studies about elder abuse in nursing homes and hospitals and SNFs, and mentally disabled patients who can't advocate for themselves, and comatose patient, and I'm just like, oh God. So it's just, you have to kind of hope that there aren't these Dr. Babineaux out there who are doing it, and then that there are nurses who, if they're aware of it, are
reporting it.
Reporting it. So I was just like, so I guess what it came down to is I was wondering how much research he did on this. If it was sort of like a Shawshank, because I felt like Shawshank was very, I haven't been to prison, but of people that I've talked to who have, and visited prison for clients, that it was pretty realistic. But I don't know how realistic this was. I guess I was just wondering, is this sort of hyped up for I'm feeding him drugs that are going to give him telekinetic powers type of situation, or this is stuff that happens all the time. I don't know.
So, not to jump to a different question, but at least for me, you asked about was it the drugs, was it the head injury?
Mm-hmm.
I guess in my mind, I put this in the same universe as the Dead Zone.
Same.
Where the head injury was more, the coma, was more of a factor in giving him supernatural powers than the drugs. I feel like the drugs were almost. I guess we don't know, and we can never know what it was, but in my mind, it was more the head injury than the drugs.
Yeah, that's how I read it, and it was the head injury combined with his sort of malevolent will, if you will, that helped him sort of unlock and unleash himself.
Evil overcame.
Right.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it was for me. It's the Tim Burton Joker theorem. I said you created me, so you have to say you created me. You remember 1989 Batman?
Yeah.
Is that the line though?
It's something like that.
It's something like that.
Oh, I said you created me, so you have to say I created you.
Yeah.
It's that's exactly what I thought of when the question came up. What actually made Brady the way he is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going the other way because I like the question because you actually brought it up on the last podcast that you were thinking it was Dead Zone And I was buying that until Brady was so adamant that the drugs didn't do it, and that he, like, of his own, like, awesomeness brought upon his powers. And he said it like multiple times, like it was not the drugs. It's just me, and I did this on my own. And I was like, no, I've decided it's not. It was the drugs all along. And he warned you that there could be all these side effects. And, it wasn't until he started taking these drugs. So.
Wait, who warned who about side effects?
Dr. Babineaux said, yeah. So, I mean, I don't think it was like telekinesis.
I was gonna say, I think the side effects are like, you may never tap dance.
No, you just said that they're like, it's not FDA approved, so the safety of it, and like some sort of side effects, but it wasn't. I have to find it.
Yeah, remind me, what was the intended effect of the drug? Was
to improve his capabilities.
So he knew that it would have something to do with mental capabilities.
Yeah, I think it was to regenerate. Sorry, go ahead, Chase.
Oh, it was called like cerebellin, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It was.
So it was going to regrow his brain better than before. Okay.
Basically.
Chase, by that logic, all I have to do is like name a drug Erector, and
Mike, if you're trying to market a drug and you call it Erector, you're gonna sell some of that drug.
That's very true. Doesn't matter what the intended effect is.
People never read those labels. So.
They do not. We call that in the VO trade. We call that fair balance. You just tune out the fair balance. They cause premature death.
Well, I always love those commercials where it's like side effects, blah 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 blah, death. I'm like, that sounds
everything can cause death.
That sounds a little scary. I think there were eye drops though. Like, I'm a little concerned.
Burn right through your eyes. I was a little surprised that, like, I kind of assumed that Brady's consciousness was still tied to his body in some way. And so when he was able to kill off the body and live on, that was a little bit of a surprise to me.
Well, that's what makes me think it wasn't the drugs.
Okay. Because
if the drugs did something to his brain to release his spirit into other people, I mean, it's so supernatural to be able to just be like, okay, I'm going to kill my body now and just take over this guy's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Holly said it about destroying a certain part of the brain and allowing him to access the other 90%. Something like that. And I mean, considering that Pete is mentioned in The Outsider, and Holly obviously plays a large part in The Outsider, I'm curious about what's in the future for Holly and Finders Keepers. Because I'm wondering if Brady actually is completely gone, and if we're going to see another Holly story, and maybe not in the next Holly story or even the one after that, but maybe 2 or 3 down the road, if Brady is going to be, if we're going to find that Brady is still alive and well inside somebody out there.
I hope not, because I feel like with Brady you really need Hodges. No, I know, and he would be somebody, like, it would be easy to see how he could have survived somehow and come back. Like, but I feel like with Brady you do need Hodges. You need that counterweight. I don't know that Holly herself can serve as it, and so
Yeah.
I think it would be missing something. Oh, maybe yeah. No, you might be right.
She could grow into that. I mean, Bill's a pretty awesome character, but she could get stronger. She kind of ends as a much stronger character, even in The Outsider.
That's true.
In The Outsider, and forgive me, I cannot for the life of me remember his name, but the cop who does the arresting in The Outsider.
Oh, is it Ray or something?
I was thinking about that when I was reading this.
He is so like, like I can almost they were almost interchangeable. I know you said this, John, but like I do feel like I need to go back and reread the Outsider now that Bill is dead and find differences between him and Bill, just to prove to myself that they're not the same guy.
Yeah, I felt they were
Troy?
very different.
The Troy?
Really? Troy?
I'm looking through it. Oh, Ramage? Huh?
The cop, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to find
Mike, are you talking about Ralph?
Hey.
Who was the cop who was the main character cop?
Yeah, the cop who was the main character, yeah.
That guy. Yeah.
But not the one who worked with Holly.
Ralph Anderson.
Yeah.
The guy who arrests
at the ball field.
Terry.
Right, Ralph. Yeah.
Ralph.
Yeah, Ralph. Like for me, I right now being completely separated from The Outsider. I mean, it's been months since I read The Outsider, and we've got 3 books since then. Ralph and Bill seem so similar to me right now. I would like to almost go back and reread The Outsider to build a wall between Ralph and Bill. Maybe it's because I like Bill so much. I don't want him to be just a
Ralph
stereotype, right? Just the cop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I read Ralph as younger and Bill as older, and I always had Brendan Gleeson in mind. So
I also thought of Brendan Gleeson.
It's kind of like you kind of have that picture all the way through, and it plays so well. Chase, have you seen any of the show?
Not yet.
I definitely
has AT&T.
No.
Nobody has that. Like, there's 4 people who have that channel. So
I really want to see Brendan Gleeson play Hodges, though.
Yeah,
I agree. I have to we have to get DirecTV for a month so I can binge watch.
You know what?
Mercedes.
This is so easy. Why didn't we think of this before? Okay, we just got to get them to sponsor our podcast. I mean,
obviously.
YouTube show. Yeah, and then that way all of us can watch it, and we're spreading the word. It's perfect.
To our 533 listeners.
We will get more.
On a good day.
Our first one was 1,000, actually.
What?
But we have 5 downvotes, so I'm not too proud. Because we didn't know what we were doing. Okay, this is a much better format right now. But before it was like,
I'm sorry, we
have that microphone.
The producer.
All right,
do we have a producer?
He's our producer. All right, look. So I found about the experimental drug. So it is cerebellin. So not cerebellum, but cerebellin. And it was produced in Bolivian Neurolab, which made it hard to get through FDA. It had only been shown promising results when tested on animals, also a problem. But it increases oxygenation, anti-seizure, helps with seizures. It has steroids in it, and it was supposed to help with increased neurological function. He saw this as an opportunity to help neurological patients, and he was like, oh, nobody cares about this murderous degenerate who is never going to wake up anyway. If by some miracle he did, his consciousness would at best be that of a shadowy sort experienced by patients with advanced Alzheimer's disease. And even that would be an amazing result. and if he should suffer some sort of adverse reaction because there had been no testing on any human patients, perhaps he may go entirely flatline. No great loss, not to you, and certainly not your family because you have none.
He's telling Brady this? That whole
He's
thing?
telling this to himself.
Oh, okay.
So as far as side effects, I guess like it's as much as like you could die or have, become even worse, because there's really been no human testing whatsoever.
Mm.
But he says basically the best he thought he could get would be like Alzheimer's level.
Didn't he mention that he was trying it on a couple other people too? Wasn't there in his files like a couple of trials?
Oh, no. It's turning into an M. Night Shyamalan plot now. Some others that show up later.
A file on his computer titled Hartsfield Cerebellum Trials.
Yeah.
So that
trials in all spread over a 14-month period.
Trials could just be one patient, though.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, no, didn't you say 9? Or you just said 9 trials?
Hartsfield trials. So you would think that.
Oh, right, because it's
9 trial runs of the drug.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I don't see Babineaux. Trying it on anybody that I don't want to say matters, but matters.
Who has people who care about their well-being?
Right.
Or that he's going to get in trouble for, killing. That apparently his, family will come looking for and maybe want an investigation on, the death and an autopsy and, it's pretty scuzzy.
Yeah, I'm not saying he was okay. All right, so there we go. The real villain in the whole thing was Dr. Babineaux.
He probably thought he was helping kill him. Like somewhere deep down, he's like, this experimental drug, let's see if it works. If it doesn't, great, he's gonna die.
I feel like it almost would be worse if it did work. Like if he brought back, this mass murderer. Well, is he a mass? Yeah, I guess he's a mass murderer. What's the definition of mass murder?
And he was a serial killer afterwards.
Right.
Yeah, but no,
we looked it up last time. He was a mass murderer, but then became a serial killer because it was over a long period of time and it was more than 3 murderers. So that's a serial killer.
That's all you need, huh?
Yeah.
All right, Chase, get to work.
Or you already there?
Chase is like,
this is being recorded.
Chase is an overachiever. He doesn't want to stop.
People watch this. I thought one of the interesting things that happened with the doctor was like how controlled he was, but then when his wife was killed, how he totally snapped out of it and was like, what happened? And we never really got any context into their relationship or anything, which I was kind of happy about. We just sort of they're married and we assume because he knew that they were planning and doing horrible things, and the nurse and like other people had been killed at that point. He knew that, but this was his wife, and so suddenly there was a problem, a big problem. And I thought that was sort of like an interesting character shift, like, whoa, this has gotten real now. And he just couldn't back out at that point, and then he just totally took over his
So you're saying Dr. Babineaux was aware of Brady being complicit in murders previous to Mrs. Babineaux dying.
I don't think that's what she's saying.
No.
No.
No, I think you don't think he knew about Nurse Scapelli? Because that happened that morning, and the used to zap it, and
I think it was like a detail that he sort of glossed over in his mind until it was his wife. That's my opinion of it.
I don't think the people that Brady inhabited were aware of what they were doing when Brady was in what he calls the driver's seat.
Like their consciousness was pushed back, but then you don't think that they were kind of watching the actions from that back seat?
The Z-Boy talks about when the first time Brady took over for him, he just remembers like losing 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And realizing he's in a different part of the hospital and being like, all right, that's fine.
Here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although I gotta say, I feel like I was just watching something recently where a similar thing happened where people were, I don't know if it was a movie or TV show or whatever, but people were blacking out and not realizing what they were doing because they were being controlled by somebody else. So I may have inferred that, but I really don't think that Al was aware of what he was doing when he was Z-Boy, and I don't think that Babineaux was aware. So as far as Scapelli, I don't think Babineaux knows that he went to her house and gave her the Zappit, and I mean maybe somewhere deep in his subconscious he does, but I don't think he's aware of that on his part in her death at all.
I would also say, even if he was, and I agree with Mike, I don't think he is, but even if he was, I think there's a big difference between giving someone a toy that will lead to something bad. But I didn't get the impression that he, even in the alternate state, stayed around for it. And then seeing, your wife there on the floor when you're not being inhabited at the time, like, fresh blood pouring out of her kind of thing. I think even if he was aware of what was going to happen to the nurse and was ruthless and didn't care, I think there's still a difference in what he was experiencing in that moment at the in the foyer of his home.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think that. At least it didn't seem to me that when Brady is controlling the bodies or the minds, that they're really aware of what's going on. It's more that morning when Bill shows up and the nurse Scapelli had been killed, and I think he knew, and I was trying to like look and see the discussions that they had that morning, Brady and him. But it seemed pretty clear to me that he knew that they were involved in that death. That he, his body was there, and like how, obviously she did kill herself. It's not, the same as, Al actually killed her. But it seemed to me that he knew he was somehow complicit in that. And but it's not the same as your wife.
But it was Dr. Babineaux who showed up at Nurse Capelli's house.
Yeah.
So the body was Dr. Babineaux, but the consciousness was Dr. Z.
Right.
Right.
So you think that when I don't know. I guess I read that differently as Dr. Babineaux being concerned that because Babineaux did, yes, with the drugs and I think he knew there was something going on with Brady, but I don't think he was aware of everything that he had done. So I think Babineaux was trying to distance himself from Hodges, but not because he thought he was complicit in Scapelli or anybody else's murder. So maybe on some subconscious level, maybe, but I don't know. That's a jump for me.
Well, it's like Al didn't know that he had killed Babineaux's wife.
No.
He had to explain it to him. I mean, Al was pretty far gone by that point, but
Yeah.
who I think I felt so bad for him the whole time. Al, Library Al.
Just losing bits of himself every time.
Yeah.
It's pretty tragic. There's that character Mike was talking about. The poor bastard.
The poor bastard, the lovable loser. Yeah, I mean, you know what? If Freddy is the lovable loser, then Library Al's definitely a poor bastard.
It's true. So we kind of touched on Brady's end. I'm just looking at these other questions. Do you think it was an appropriate end?
I think it was fitting. A nice completion of the circle, I suppose.
I like the parallel to him getting plowed down by some heavy machinery.
Me too.
I like that. I didn't really like that they gave him the gun that much.
No, I wanted him to suffer.
Yeah, and he used his psychic ability to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
It was a little... I didn't like that.
No, there was I think there was a malicious part of me that wanted like Bill or Howie or somebody to step on his liver or something like that, you know.
I think his liver was like lying 2 feet away from him, so
exactly. Or like just reach up into the chest cavity and be like, you know, like squeeze the lungs, be like, can you breathe, Brady? Can you breathe? How's that? You know.
Jeez.
It goes
That's a little dark.
It is, but it goes back to the woman with the baby. Maybe it's having a dad, maybe it's having a 2-year-old, you know, 40 feet down the hallway, you know. But like, I did. I wanted someone to be like, oh, you're dying, you know, let me strangle you a little bit, you know.
Let's make it hurt just a bit more.
Yeah, I don't want you to to float away into the next. No, I want you to be in pain and just completely distraught as you pass to the next world, whatever it may be.
Well, it's like in Finders Keepers. I forget the guy's name. The bad guy.
Yeah.
He immolates. He burns up over his everything he wanted for his entire life. I mean, that's fitting and that's brutal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Brady was horrible.
Yeah.
He accidentally killed his mom because he was trying to poison their dog so they'd suffer so he could get to Hodges.
You're right.
I will say I was surprised they gave him the gun. I don't remember who gives him the gun, but I sort of expected them to pick up the gun and be like, hey, here's the gun, Brady. And
sucker. Yeah. I think it was Holly. Because she just I'll have to look. I've been looking so many things up. But that's sort of my recollection.
I think it was Bill. Because she has the gun and Bill holds his hand out and she hands it to him.
Yeah.
And they say something like a nurse.
It was his dad's gun, and especially being his dad's gun, I'm like, don't give him your dad's gun. Don't let your dad's gun free him. Let him just wither. And
Bill.
So I was going to say,
go for it, John.
Do you think there was a chance that was supposed to be more of a tease, that they didn't think he could physically do it and didn't think about how he could telekinetically do it?
That's how I read it.
Maybe.
And because then Jerome afterwards says it was his final trick or something like that. So like it kind of surprised them that he was able to do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
but then Brady totally wins.
Because he got to, like, they were trying to taunt him and he was able to find a way out of that trap.
I don't think they were trying to taunt him because I think Holly helped him, pointed at his head,
She did. You're right.
and she was like, his finger's not even on the trigger. You guys are gonna have to do it because I can't. And then he does it.
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill put the gun in his hand, and then Holly did it. I think
If you can't help me, shoot me.
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things, that you see in a lot of books where, like, the good guys are the good guys, and even when the bad guys at their mercy, they're not going to become the bad guys. And in this case, that means they're not going to, just stand there and watch him suffer to death, and they're not going to reach in and squeeze his lungs. They're gonna.
I guess that means I'm a bad guy, John.
See, we learn something every single one.
So I looked it up, and the conversation Brady had with the doctor right before Hodges shows up is actually about Barbara. How he thinks he had just killed Barbara, and the doctor's like, okay, that's fine, whatever, but he's about to show up here, and you look like you just ran, a marathon, because he's all sweaty, he's just concentrated. And so you certainly don't look like you're like a vegetable. So what the hell are we supposed to do about that? So he's like, then you distract him. And he's like, okay, fine. So he's definitely like knowledgeable about if he's not knowing what's happening while he's being controlled, he's knowledgeable about what's going on when he's not being controlled.
But at that point, don't we know that Brady has enough information on Dr. Babineaux to expose him? So Babineaux's like, I've gotta
play ball.
I gotta play ball. Yeah.
I didn't think that other than the vitamins and that stuff, I was under the impression that the other things Brady sort of had over him were things that he wouldn't have remembered doing in the first place. Stealing something and sort of hiding at his desk and the other things. That was all while he was being sort of controlled by Brady.
Yeah, I mean the stuff that I think Babineaux knew about the illegal drugs and the testing on humans. No, I don't think that Babineaux knew that if he were to go down, that he would go down so hard, being that they were going to find that they were going to find footage of him stealing stuff and it's stashed in his desk and stuff like that. For me, I think Brady was in control, and I don't even want to say that the consciousness was in the back seat. The consciousness wasn't even in the car. The consciousness was sort of like, out to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. This is the type of book where there were definitely some parts that I read really fast because I wanted to know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of little details that each one of us sees. That's another great reason for this conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Now again, it's the kind of thing I'm like, well, if I were to go back and read this again right now, I would sort of would I pay more attention to when Babineaux was, what Babineaux was aware of, what Library Owl was aware of. But I also think maybe even if they were aware of something at the time, and after the fact, as they say, like, as he becomes more and more of an Alzheimer's patient, for lack of a better term, does he just forget what was going on?
Mm-hmm.
As more and more of their psyche is being eroded, would they even remember or care?
Yeah.
But I'm the bad guy, so
Just a little bit.
I would squeeze his lungs.
I'd do it. I would back up and then run over him again. That's how I'd put him out of his misery.
Yeah.
No, I think even that's too good. I'm telling you, I'm reaching into the chest cavity, and I want my thumbs to sink into like that squishy lung material. Like I want to
Are there nerves in the lungs like that? Like, would we feel that?
I'm sure.
It's really painful to run out of air.
No, it all sounds so gross.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put my hands in someone's chest. Doesn't sound good.
You're a good guy, Jessica.
I'd rather just run them over again. Like you're just underneath my car or my snowmobile, as it were. That's how I like to do it. If I was,
it sounds like what Brady would have done.
Well, no, that's what we said.
What Brady did do.
Yeah,
that was the parallel that Jerome ran him over. So
I didn't even catch that. Is that in the book? Did they specifically say that?
That's totally in the book.
Chase said
what?
it. Chase said it. He's like, I like that there's a parallel to the fact that he got run over by a big machine.
I think Hodges says it's like what you did to people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's there in the book.
I gotta, you know what? This is what happens when I read it 2 months ago and then try to just hop on in. Oof, I did not remember that.
I feel like I would have been stand there. I would pick up his legs and be like, "Hey Brady, here's your legs." Awesome. Be like, "Oh, where'd they go? I got your legs."
Like the Scarecrow in Wizard of Oz. He picked up my legs and he put them over there. And he picked up my chest and he put them over there.
You're good.
I am a flying monkey. Okay, I'm.
That's your appropriate level of evil. You're not quite the Wicked Witch, but you're like a flying monkey.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I just saw that on the big screen because of the thing I shared on Facebook, and they're gonna show Shawshank. I already put it on my calendar.
Is that September of this year though? So
this year.
8 months from now? Or
yes.
7 or something? Wow.
Mark it. Because John, have you seen it yet?
Nope.
I see it. I don't understand that, but you just wait.
Yeah, I feel like you shouldn't wait that long, John. Just get after it.
I mean, now that I know it's going to come on the big screen, I might as well just...
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool.
Enjoy for the first time to see it on the big screen. That's pretty cool.
That is.
I don't know. It's funny. I feel like Shawshank isn't one of those films you need to see on the big screen. Maybe,
I wish they were showing Jaws. I would like to see it on the big screen.
Jaws on the big screen I could get behind. I feel like Shawshank, I'm good in my living room.
I mean, likely with 2 kids, probably wind up seeing it in the living room and not in the big screen.
That's a good point. You stop procrastinating. Isn't it on Netflix?
Is it?
I don't think it is anymore. It was for a while.
Maybe Amazon Prime.
That sounds right.
Oh, it's so good.
Kids, I gotta. It is
getting late.
Yeah.
Ooh, I didn't even realize it was so late.
I gotta wrap it up because if the baby's not asleep, someone's gonna need backup. So, yeah, I mean, I am always grateful for these conversations that we have. I love these books, but I love talking about them with you guys even more.
Yeah.
Right back at you.
Thank you very much, guys.
We're gonna shoot for. John pointed out we haven't read anything from the early 90s to the mid 2000s, so that's gonna be our next nomination period.
Sweet.
All right.
I looked at that list. I'm not sure there's a lot of material to mine from.
Well, I
He
mean,
only writes 1 or 2 books a year, so there's got to be something in there.
That's not what I was talking about. I was looking at them. I was like,
Nothing good? Or
I
what?
mean, maybe every once in a while we need to read a bad one to remind
That's
ourselves that
true.
he's only human and.
I was like, was that the period where he was like laid up in the hospital?
Dreamcatcher was.
Dreamcatcher stood out. Dreamcatcher stood out, and what are the 2 parallel ones? It's the Regulators.
Oh, Regulators and
Desperation.
Oh, those are good.
I would be up for those because
that's 1,000+ pages, guys.
I've read
Damn.
one of them before,
I
and
read Desperation. I never read the Regulator.
I don't remember which one I read.
Desperation was good though.
I've never read either.
Food for thought. Also think about whose lungs you would actually want to squeeze.
Do they have to be living, or can they already
No, they have to be alive.
They have to be alive?
Like barely alive though. Like, on their way out.
Right.
They have to be barely alive?
Half crushed under things you can actually reach the lungs and.
Okay, so we're hypothetically speaking. Okay.
I'm not cutting somebody open to get to their lungs, but if they're cut open and I can reach in and grab their lungs.
God. Ugh.
If you have the opportunity.
That's a beautiful place.
Dead people that I
My wife was sitting on the couch, like literally 3 feet from me, and I'm wondering if she's still there and how much of this is hearing.
I'll ask her who would do it.
We'll find out if you're not allowed back.
Yeah, right? What do you do in that club?
I keep trying to get my mom in because she's such an avid, Stephen King person.
What?
And I was like, yeah, she has a first edition collection that she's trying to hone, and I already called it. It's like, when you die, those are mine.
What she's used to describe her?
She's saying avid.
Avid fan.
I heard.
What do you think she said?
And I'm like, what the hell does that mean?
Dolores Claiborne's in there. Oh, you already read Needful Things. Damn. All right.
Yeah, Needful Things was the latest. We went 91, and then we jumped.
This is what I was gonna
I
suggest.
already read Salem's Lot, so it's basically up till Salem's Lot.
I think if we were looking
All
at
right. If we do Green Mile, then it has to be put together. Did you guys read the Green Mile when it was those little books that came out each week?
No, I just had the novel.
No.
Oh, all right. When you read the novel, did it start when it was put together? Did each part start with the old guy?
I honestly don't remember. It's been
oh my god! All right, I won't nominate it until I go to the library and look, because the way it was released back in when it was first released, it was a little chunk at a time, and so the little chunk at the beginning of the chunk, it would be the old guy and be like, "Well, let me tell you what I'm recapping and talking about," and I was like, "Listen, old guy. I just want to get into the story. I don't want to hear about you anymore." Okay.
Listen, old guy.
Listen, man. Okay, Library Al.
Basically, Library Al. I can confidently say that there's only about 5 movies I think are better than the book, and that is The Green Mile.
Okay. So you're saying you don't like the book?
If it's the way I read it originally, with these 7 teeny little books that all.
This is me washing my hands of The Green Mile.
But if
Wow.
out those little signets. So I'm gonna go to the library because it's a fabulous story. But they literally had like a 10, 15 page at the beginning of each thing that was like so worthless that it was just awful.
All right.
Like Moby Dick, where you just
Yeah, I really don't remember.
about like whale bones and whale fat, and then the rest of the book is good. Get that part.
We'll see. Yeah,
Let's
I think we're in the right
guys.
ballpark.
Let's see. What I looked at was everything from 91 through 2010. So Dreamcatcher and Regulators / Dreamcatcher / so basically I looked at the thing that we did I looked at the biggest gap we have. So 91 was Needful Things and 2010 was I forget which, but looking at that gap. So whatever you guys decide, I will nominate accordingly.
Aren't we? Is it
vote.
Salem's Lot where we stopped?
That was a reprint. Salem's Lot was a reprint.
Yeah, duh. Yeah.
Yeah, so like there was a print of Salem's Lot. So
man, so hard and go Under the Dome.
And the dome is sweet.
I don't know.
No, please no.
Yes. Oh no.
You didn't like it, or it's just too much?
I was great until the end, and then more of this and drove me insane.
Wait, Mike already washed his hands though, so it's not coming back. We won't have more of the hand of God.
I washed the hands of God. How do you say I wash the hands of God in Latin? Lavate.
All right, I'll put out the nominations. Thanks.
All right.
Jessica.
Thank you, guys.
everybody.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too.
Bye.